Let's face it, life doesn't come with a manual, and half the time we're just winging it. But what if I told you there's a philosophy that doesn't just sit in the clouds of abstract thought, but actually gives you a toolkit for real life? That's right, pragmatism. Forget about overcomplicating decisions or getting stuck in the what-ifs. Pragmatism is all about one thing: what works. And today, we're diving into how you can apply this mindset to your everyday challenges, whether it's navigating tricky relationships, making career moves, or just deciding what to have for dinner without spiraling into indecision. This isn't your typical philosophical fluff. It's real, raw, and actionable. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll have practical strategies to cut through the noise, make decisions with confidence, and create a life that actually works for you. Ready to rethink the way you approach everything? Let's get started. Number 1. Trade principles for results. Let me start with a bold question. What if I told you that sticking to your principles might be the very thing holding you back? I know, it sounds controversial. We're taught from a young age that principles are sacred, unshakable, the backbone of our integrity. But here's the twist. Sometimes principles can be the chains keeping us from moving forward. Before you shake your head in disbelief, stick with me on this. This isn't about abandoning values. It's about rethinking how rigid we need to be when the stakes are high and the outcomes matter. You've been there, right? In that work meeting where everyone's spinning their wheels, debating the right approach, while the clock ticks on the deadline. Or maybe in a personal relationship where you're holding on to being right, but it's costing you peace. You know the type. Those moments where you're so stuck on principle that you lose sight of the bigger picture. We've all been there, clinging to an ideal while opportunities slip through our fingers. Now here's the idea. Trade your principles for results, but do it strategically. Think of principles not as rigid rules, but as tools in your toolbox. Use them when they serve the greater good, but don't be afraid to set them aside temporarily when the situation demands it. This isn't about being sneaky or unethical, it's about being practical. For instance, if collaboration at work means letting go of a my way or the highway mindset, isn't the end result, a successful project, worth it? Or in a family argument, conceding a point you don't fully agree with might save you hours of tension and open the door for meaningful dialogue. Let me share a personal story. I once had a colleague who was fiercely principled about never responding to emails after hours. Admirable, right? But one night, a big client had a last-minute issue and he refused to budge. The result? The client felt ignored, the project suffered, and guess who had to clean up the mess the next day? Spoiler alert, it wasn't him. Watching that unfold taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes being flexible can mean the difference between failure and success. This isn't about sacrificing your values or becoming a pushover. It's about knowing when to bend so you don't break. Trading principles for results is about reclaiming your focus, your goals, and your impact. It's recognizing that life isn't always black and white, and sometimes the best outcomes come from operating in the gray. So here's the takeaway. Next time you're in a situation where sticking to your principles feels noble but isn't getting you anywhere, ask yourself this: what matters more, the principle or the result? This is your opportunity to reclaim your space, your peace, and your success. Remember, strength isn't in unyielding rigidity, it's in the power to adapt. Now go out there and trade wisely. Number 2. Prioritize the path of least resistance. Here's a bold thought for you. What if the easiest option is actually the best one? I know it sounds counterintuitive. We're constantly told that anything worth having comes with hard work, hustle, and struggle. But let me ask you this. How many times have you chosen the most complicated route just to feel like you've earned the outcome, only to end up exhausted, frustrated, and questioning if it was even worth it. Now trust me on this, I'm not saying you should cut corners or settle for mediocrity. What I'm saying is that sometimes the easiest path is the smartest one, and embracing it doesn't make you lazy, it makes you strategic. We've all been there, haven't we? Staring at a mile-long to-do list, overthinking every decision, and convincing ourselves that the hard way is the right way. Maybe you've spent hours crafting the perfect email when a quick phone call could have solved everything. Or maybe you've stayed up late trying to master a new skill when you could have delegated the task or used a tool to simplify it. You know the type. Those situations where we make life harder than it needs to be because we think struggle equals success. Here's the twist. Prioritizing the path of least resistance doesn't mean taking the easy way out. It means focusing your energy where it matters most. It's about cutting out unnecessary friction and letting go of perfectionism. Think of it this way. When water flows downhill, it doesn't try to carve through solid rock. It finds the cracks and adapts. You can do the same in your life by identifying the quickest, simplest solutions and allowing yourself to use them guilt-free. Let me give you an example from my own life. A few months ago, I had to organize a small team project at work. My initial instinct was to create a detailed action plan, hold multiple brainstorming sessions, and micromanage every step. But I was swamped with other tasks, and I knew that approach would drain me. So, instead, I sent out a shared document, laid out the basic framework, and asked everyone to fill in their ideas. Guess what? The team ran with it, and the project turned out better than I expected. By stepping back and trusting the simplest solution, I saved myself hours of stress and allowed the team to shine. This is about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your focus. It's about realizing that you don't need to prove your worth through unnecessary struggle. By prioritizing the path of least resistance, you free yourself to tackle the things that truly matter, whether that's spending time with loved ones, pursuing your passions, or simply taking a breather. So, here's my challenge to you. The next time you're faced with a decision, ask yourself, what's the simplest way to get this done without sacrificing the outcome? And then take that path without guilt, without hesitation. This isn't about being lazy, it's about being wise, because at the end of the day, success isn't measured by how hard you work, it's measured by how smart you work. Remember, life isn't a battle, it's a flow. Find your cracks, adapt, and let yourself win with ease. Number 3, the 60-40 compromise rule. What if I told you that aiming for perfect balance in every aspect of life is not only unrealistic, but might be the very reason you feel stuck? We've all been told that relationships, projects, and decisions should be 50-50, right down the middle. But here's the thing, life doesn't work like that. Perfection is a myth, and trying to split everything equally is a recipe for frustration. So here's an unconventional thought. Aim for 60-40 instead. It's not a precise science, but trust me, it's a game changer. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself in a deadlock because you were waiting for the other person to meet you halfway? Maybe it's in a relationship where you're always calculating who did what. I wash the dishes, so you should take out the trash. Or at work, where you feel like you're doing more than your fair share, so you hold back until someone else steps up. We've all been there, right? That constant scoreboard mentality. It's exhausting, isn't it? The 60-40 compromise rule flips this on its head. Instead of striving for a perfect split, you willingly give 60% of the effort, attention, or compromise and expect only 40% in return. Sounds unfair, doesn't it? But here's the twist. When you lead with generosity, things tend to even out naturally. It's like creating momentum. Your extra 10% inspires others to step up and meet you there. sometimes even surpassing your effort. Let me share a story to bring this to life. A while ago, I had a friend who was terrible at responding to texts. You know the type. They'd leave you on read for days. I used to get frustrated thinking, why should I always be the one reaching out? Then I decided to apply the 60-40 rule. I kept initiating, even when it felt like I was doing more. Slowly but surely, they started reciprocating. One day, they even told me how much they appreciated my consistency during a tough time in their life. It hit me. Sometimes that little extra effort we put in can make a bigger impact than we realize. This isn't about being a doormat or letting people take advantage of you. It's about reclaiming your emotional energy by letting go of the need for things to be perfectly balanced. It's about understanding that giving a little more, in the right situations, often brings unexpected rewards, whether that's deeper connections, smoother collaborations, or simply peace of mind. So, here's the takeaway. The next time you're in a situation where you feel the urge to hold back until the scales are perfectly balanced, ask yourself, what would happen if I gave just a little bit more? This isn't about keeping score, it's about creating flow. Because in life, the real win isn't about splitting the pie evenly. It's about making sure there's enough pie to go around. Lead with 60% and watch how the other 40% finds its way back to you. Number 4, hack your truth. What if the version of yourself you've been clinging to isn't even the real you? Bold claim, right? But think about it for a second. How much of what you believe about yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, likes, dislikes, was shaped by outside influences? Maybe it's something a teacher said years ago, or the way your friends saw you, or even a role you've been playing in your family. Now you might be thinking, okay, so what? That's just who I am. But here's the twist. What if you could rewrite the script? What if you could hack your truth to become the person you actually want to be, instead of the person you've been told you are? We've all been there, stuck in roles that don't quite fit. Maybe you're the responsible one, the funny one, or the quiet one. People expect you to act a certain way, and over time you start living up to those labels, whether they truly resonate with you or not. You know the type of moments I'm talking about, right? Those times when you think, why am I doing this? This doesn't even feel like me. It's like wearing a jacket 2 sizes too small because someone convinced you it looked good. Here's where hacking your truth comes in. Instead of accepting every belief about yourself as gospel, start questioning it. Ask yourself, is this really me, or is this a story I've been told? For example, maybe you've always thought you're bad at public speaking because of one awkward presentation in school. But is that the truth, or just a moment you've allowed to define you? Hacking your truth means finding the cracks in these old stories and rewriting them to reflect who you truly are, or who you want to become. Let me share a personal story. I used to think I was terrible at confrontation. I'd avoid it at all costs, convincing myself I was too nice to speak up. One day, a friend of mine called me out on it, kindly but firmly. They said, "You're not bad at confrontation, you just don't like feeling uncomfortable." That hit me like a ton of bricks. They were right. The story I'd been telling myself wasn't the truth, it was an excuse. From that moment, I decided to hack my truth. I started small, speaking up in low-stakes situations. Over time, I realized I wasn't just capable of confrontation, I was good at it when I focused on being honest and empathetic. This is about reclaiming your identity, your potential, and your freedom. It's about understanding that the truth about who you are isn't set in stone. It's fluid, adaptable, and entirely yours to shape. By hacking your truth, you're not being fake or inauthentic. You're peeling back the layers of what's been imposed on you and rediscovering the core of who you are. So, here's your challenge. Take one belief you hold about yourself, something limiting or negative, and question it. Where did it come from? Is it really true, or is it just a story you've accepted? Then rewrite it. Create a version of that belief that empowers you instead of holding you back. Because hacking your truth isn't about lying to yourself. It's about finally being honest with yourself in the most liberating way possible. And that's the kind of truth worth living. Number 5, kill sentimental attachments. Let's start with something that might make you a little uncomfortable. Not every attachment you have is worth keeping. Harsh? Maybe. But stick with me on this. We often hold on to things, people, or even ideas far longer than we should, not because they serve us, but because we've romanticized what they once meant. Now you might be thinking, isn't being sentimental a good thing? Sure, to a point. But when sentiment becomes a chain keeping you stuck in the past, it's time to let go. You know the feeling, right? That old sweater you can't throw away because it reminds you of college, or the toxic friendship you cling to because they were there when no one else was. We've all been there, trapped by our own nostalgia, giving too much weight to the past while sacrificing the present. It's like keeping a wilted plant because it used to bloom beautifully. It doesn't make sense, but it feels too emotional to toss. Here's the idea. You don't have to discard every memory or feeling, but you do need to prioritize what actually aligns with your life now. Killing sentimental attachments isn't about being cold-hearted. It's about being clear-headed. When you cling to outdated connections, whether it's an object, a relationship, or even a dream that no longer serves you, you're crowding out space for growth, for better opportunities, for what's next. Let me share a quick story. I once had this old notebook. It was filled with ideas I had scribbled down in my early 20s, dreams, goals, random doodles. At the time, it felt sacred, like a time capsule of my younger self. But as I flipped through it years later, I realized most of those ideas didn't resonate with me anymore. Some weren't even realistic. Yet I hesitated to let it go. What if I need this one day? I told myself. Eventually, I decided to toss it. And you know what? The moment I did, I felt lighter. It wasn't just the notebook I got rid of, it was the weight of trying to be someone I no longer was. This is about reclaiming your mental and emotional space. It's about recognizing that holding on for sentiment's sake can be an anchor rather than a lifeline. Imagine how liberating it is to make room for the person you're becoming instead of staying tethered to the person you were. This isn't about erasing the past. It's about honoring it without letting it define you. So, here's your challenge. Pick one thing you're overly attached to and ask yourself, does this add value to my life today, or am I holding on out of habit? If it's the latter, let it go. Because every time you release what no longer serves you, you create space for something that truly will. Killing sentimental attachments isn't an act of loss. It's an act of growth. And growth is where the magic happens. Number 6. Profit from every failure. Failure. Just hearing the word probably brings a sinking feeling, right? It's like this universal trigger for all the times things didn't go as planned, from small slip-ups to major letdowns. But here's a thought that might flip the script for you. Failure is a goldmine. Yes, you heard me right. Every failure you've ever had, every cringeworthy moment, every "why did I even try" disaster has hidden profit buried inside it. Now, you might be thinking, how exactly am I supposed to profit from the train wrecks of my life? Stay with me on this, because it's about to get interesting. We've all been there. Maybe it was a job interview you thought you nailed, only to get that generic rejection email. Or a project you poured your heart into that just didn't land the way you hoped. It's frustrating, right? The urge to spiral into self-doubt is real. You start replaying everything in your head, dissecting it like a crime scene. But here's the thing, failure is never the end of the story unless you let it be. In fact, it's the beginning of something far more valuable, if you know how to look at it. The idea is simple but powerful. Treat every failure as an investment. Each mistake, setback, or missed opportunity holds a lesson, a skill, or a perspective that adds to your growth. The trick is shifting your focus. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" start asking, "What can I take away from this?" It's not about sugarcoating the situation. It's about mining the experience for something useful. Think of it like alchemy, turning the lead of failure into the gold of insight. Let me share a quick story. A few years ago, I bombed a presentation at work. I mean, it was bad. I forgot half my points, stumbled over my words, and ended up with that awkward silence where everyone's just staring at you. For days, I couldn't stop replaying it in my mind. But then, I decided to stop wallowing and dissect what went wrong. Turns out, I had underestimated the importance of preparation. That failure taught me the value of over-preparing, of rehearsing until it felt natural. Fast forward to my next presentation. I crushed it, and I wouldn't have if it weren't for that earlier flop. This is about reclaiming your power. Failure isn't a verdict, it's feedback. It's life nudging you to adjust, to sharpen your skills, to rethink your strategy. Every successful person you admire, they've failed, probably more times than you realize. The difference is, they didn't let their failures define them. They profited from them. So here's the takeaway. The next time you fail, don't let it knock you down. Analyze it, learn from it, and use it as a stepping stone. This isn't about avoiding failure. It's about embracing it as part of the process. Because when you learn to profit from every failure, you're unstoppable. You're not just surviving setbacks, you're thriving through them. And that, my friend, is where real success begins. Number 7, morality on demand. Here's a thought that might rattle you a little. Morality isn't a fixed set of rules we carry around like an instruction manual. It's more like a playlist you curate for different moments in life. Now, before you jump to conclusions and think, wait, are you saying I should just bend my principles whenever it's convenient? Let me clarify. This isn't about being inconsistent or manipulative. It's about understanding that our sense of right and wrong can, and sometimes should, adapt to the situation at hand. We've all been there, stuck in one of those impossible dilemmas where doing what feels right clashes with what's practical. Maybe it's declining a request from a close friend when you know saying yes would stretch you too thin, or maybe it's telling a white lie to avoid hurting someone's feelings. In those moments, doesn't it feel like morality isn't so black and white? Like it's more of a balancing act? The truth is, morality isn't a one-size-fits-all formula. It's more dynamic, and learning to navigate it consciously can make life a lot more manageable and a lot more genuine. The idea here is morality on demand. Think of it as a way to make your values work for you rather than against you. It doesn't mean abandoning your principles, it means prioritizing them based on the context. Let's face it, life is messy, and sticking rigidly to a single moral code often leads to guilt, resentment, or unnecessary conflict. But when you allow yourself to tailor your approach, when you give yourself permission to decide what matters most in the moment, you're not being dishonest. You're being thoughtful. I remember a time when I had to cancel on a big favor I'd promised a friend because of a family emergency. The old me would have bent over backward to make it work, even if it meant running myself ragged. But instead, I decided that in that moment, my responsibility to my family outweighed my commitment to my friend. I explained the situation honestly, and guess what? My friend understood. No bridges were burned, no relationships damaged. What I learned was that flexibility in my moral priorities didn't make me unreliable, it made me human. This is about giving yourself the grace to adapt, to acknowledge that different situations call for different versions of you. It's about reclaiming your agency in moments where life throws you a curveball and the right answer isn't obvious. When you allow morality to be dynamic, it stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a tool, a way to navigate the complexities of life with honesty and compassion, both for others and for yourself. So the next time you're faced with a tough call, don't let the fear of being wrong paralyze you. Remember, morality on demand isn't about cutting corners. It's about cutting through the noise to figure out what truly matters in the moment. Because in the end, morality isn't about perfection, it's about intention. And living with intention, that's where real strength and peace come from. Number 8. Invest in opportunistic generosity. Here's a little secret. Generosity isn't just about giving, it's about knowing when to give. That's right, timing matters. You don't have to be the person who gives endlessly without thinking, nor the one who holds back out of fear of being taken advantage of. Instead, imagine generosity as a strategic investment. And no, this isn't about being manipulative or calculating. It's about recognizing that the right act of kindness, offered at the right moment, can ripple outward in ways you never expected. Think about it. Have you ever had someone show up for you in a way that felt almost magical, like they knew exactly what you needed before you did? Maybe it was a friend who covered for you when you were short on cash, or a colleague who stepped in to defend you during a tough meeting. It wasn't just the act that mattered, it was the timing. That kind of generosity sticks with us because it's not random, it's intentional, it's powerful. So here's the idea. Invest in opportunistic generosity. Look for moments where a small gesture on your part can make a huge impact for someone else. It could be as simple as offering to help a neighbor when you notice they're struggling with their groceries, or sending a message of encouragement to a friend who seems off. These aren't grand acts, they're perfectly timed ones. And the beauty is, you don't lose anything by doing them. If anything, you gain something priceless: trust, goodwill, and an unshakable sense of connection. I'll give you an example. A few months ago, I was at a coffee shop, and I noticed the barista looked absolutely drained. You could see it in her eyes, the kind of exhaustion that comes from feeling invisible all day long. So instead of just grabbing my coffee and heading out, I made a point to genuinely thank her for her hard work. I even threw in a compliment about how fast she was juggling orders. It was such a small thing, but her reaction was unforgettable. Her whole face lit up, and she said, "You have no idea how much I needed that today." That moment wasn't about me. It was about seizing an opportunity to uplift someone who needed it. The trick is to stay present. Pay attention to the little cues people give off, the sighs, the hesitations, the subtle signs of overwhelm or frustration. Opportunistic generosity doesn't demand much from you. It just asks you to notice. And when you do, you'll start to see these windows of opportunity everywhere. It's like opening a door to a world where giving is less about obligation and more about joy. This isn't just about making others feel good, it's about how it transforms you too. There's something incredibly empowering about knowing you have the ability to make someone's day better, no matter how small the gesture. It reminds you of your agency, your impact, your humanity. And in a world that can feel isolating and transactional, that's a gift worth holding on to. So the next time you find yourself in a position to give, whether it's your time, your words, or something more tangible, pause and ask yourself, is this one of those moments? When you invest in opportunistic generosity, you're not just giving, you're building bridges, fostering trust, and planting seeds of kindness that might just grow into something extraordinary. And that's an investment worth making every single time. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you found these insights on applying pragmatism in everyday scenarios helpful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button to let me know it resonated with you. And if you want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next. If you know someone who could benefit from a more practical approach to life, share this video with them. I'd love to hear your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going and build a community of like-minded individuals. Remember, life is about what works, not what's perfect. So take the tools you've learned today, apply them, and make every decision count. Stay empowered, and I'll see you in the next video.